Welcome to the Ricky Matthews Show. Appreciate you joining us as we continue to celebrate the men and women who are making coastal Mississippi and Mississippi, for that matter, such a wonderful place to live, work, and play. I'm actually up at my place in the Mississippi Delta in a small town called Itabena, Mississippi, right outside of Greenwood. And of course, if you hit Highway 82 very close to us here, you eventually make your way over to Indianola and Greenville. Of course, you can make your way to Clarksdale as well. But it's a special time of the year here in the Mississippi Delta, and I love being here. I have a lot of wonderful friends here, and a lot of my friends from the coast join me, and it's just a great brotherhood up here. But thank you for joining us today. And we have actually a special show today. We're going to be moving quickly in just a second to my friend Laurie Jackson, who's a missionary in Western Ukraine, and she has joined us every few months from Ukraine to kind of give us the latest. And I was doing some research this morning, and I was reminded that she posted something on her Facebook page about a year ago, and it was sharing a quote that Elie Wiesel shared. And for you, those of you who don't know who that is, he was a Romanian-born American writer, professor, political activist. He was a Nobel laureate, Holocaust survivor, and he authored 57 books, written mostly in French and English. And so, yeah, really, a lot about his experience as a Jewish prisoner in Auschwitz and other concentration camps. And Laurie shared this, and it makes me think of, as Americans, sort of where should we be when it comes to the war in Ukraine? Where should we be as it relates to what is happening in the Middle East now and the issues that Israel is facing, not only with Hamas, but other terrorist groups that surround them that would love to see every Jew killed. It's just a reality of what we have to think about. But here's the quote that Wiesel said, and this is what Laurie Jackson shared. We must always take sides. Neutrality helps the oppressor, never the victim. Silence encourages the tormentor, never the tormented. The tormentor, never the tormented. Sometimes we must interfere. When human lives are endangered, when human dignity is in jeopardy, national borders and sensitivities become irrelevant. And obviously, as it relates to the experience that Wiesel had in the concentration camps and this incredible slaughter of humans that was taking place there, too many around the world didn't take note quickly enough. And of course, we know the rest of the story. And we cannot turn our heads to what's happening in Ukraine. We cannot turn our heads to what's happening in Israel. And when I visit with my friend Laurie, who is from Florida, incidentally, she's been in Ukraine for about 17 years. I met her through my cousin's daughter, who has adopted 2 young men from Ukraine, and Laurie assisted with, I think, at least one of those. And so I've become friends with Laurie, and I've watched her carefully, this incredible volunteer effort that she has underway there. And so I'm looking forward to checking in with her today. So without any further ado, let me turn over to my friend Laurie Jackson, who's coming to us from Western Ukraine. How you doing, Laurie?
Hey, we're okay, pressing on. Thank you for having me.
Well, Laurie, it's something important to me to reflect about this time of year. So I noticed behind you got the Christmas decorations. Mm-hmm. So many of the people that you're working with in this incredible volunteer effort that we're gonna help people understand what it's all about are Christians, and they believe in God and celebrate Jesus and God just the way we do, here in the South. Mm-hmm. And so we share that significant Christian belief. And you do a lot of praying these days, don't you, my friend?
Pretty much constantly.
Listen, before I moved, when I was about to move all of my radio equipment to get it all packed up so I could do the show from the Mississippi Delta, I rolled over this little this thing that I have my laptop sitting on, and out pops the Christmas card that you and your group of ants. We'll explain people what ants means in a second. came out from underneath, and I read it to myself, and I thought, gosh, here we are again, another year, has gone by, and you're still watching friends die. You're watching this incredible war continue to go on. And from where you're sitting, really no end in sight. We really don't know what the resolution is going to be. But it's almost like time stands still, but the only difference is that friends continue to die. It's a very, very tough situation for you guys, isn't it?
It is really hard. It's really hard to know what comes next, and for how long. That's probably my most constant prayer is how long, oh Lord?
Yeah, I mentioned to you that I've done a lot of reading. I stay very much abreast of what's being written by the international press, the American press. I watch the BBC, which I mentioned to you, because I think they give a good international perspective on things. And, I do think that the tolerance for this war is starting to wane, and will be interesting to see what comes of it. I pray, too, that it comes to an end sooner than later.
Mm-hmm.
But I've often compared, for people who've not listened to you and me talk before, I've often compared the situation in Ukraine sort of to what we experienced after Hurricane Katrina. In other words, just incredible hurricane came and went, and then this unbelievable volunteer effort cropped up, and we began to understand what resiliency really is all about: the ability to bounce back, the ability to support our neighbors and our friends, the powerful prayers. The politics don't matter anymore. All that matters is how can we help our neighbors. But in your case, it's a hurricane that hit and didn't go away. It just continues to hit every single day. I know that you're tired, but this is volunteer. It's a International Volunteer Day today.
It is.
You've got volunteers from all stripes, people who used to work in all kinds of professions, that have rallied around the support efforts that you've put in place to help families and fighters and so many others. It's been inspiring at the same time that it knocks the wind out of you every day. I know it does, but it's also been inspiring to see people come to help each other, isn't it?
Anytime we see people come alongside to help in any way, it's like a breath of fresh air. Okay, we can keep doing this because there's someone coming alongside who's going to be helping you help others.
So I've stayed up to abreast of the efforts that you have underway, and man, your drivers are staying on the road. So let's take a step back a little bit, and let's describe what this Friends of UA Ants, the UA Ants effort, is all about.
Everyone probably knows or remembers that on February 24th, 2002, Russia launched a full-scale invasion of Ukraine. This wasn't the start of the war. The war started in 2014 in eastern Ukraine. I was actually displaced from there, living in Kyiv, the capital city, when the full-scale invasion started, and woke up to explosions and was staying with some friends, and we said, okay, what are we going to do? We got in the car and started heading west for safety, really, and ended up in an old rundown hotel with some other friends. And the next morning woke up and said, okay, what are we going to do? And I didn't want to leave, and the guys couldn't leave, and Lisa didn't want to leave her husband. And so we had other friends on the road, and we said, okay, how can we help? Can we rent the hotel for a week? And we did. And we started helping people figure out where to go. And a lot of people were staying with us, and a lot of people were going further into Europe. At the time, a lot of people who were in Europe, the programs they were under ran out, and they've returned to Ukraine since then. And the residents we have now, their homes are occupied or being bombed constantly. Several of them have lost their apartments, either partially or fully. And so we're here doing that. But we also, once we started doing that, we said, okay, we need to help our friends who are on the front. And several people were drafted from our hotel And we started helping them. In the beginning, especially, Ukraine wasn't ready for such a large-scale war. And our defenders needed socks and gloves. And so we were helping provide those things. And now we have about 100 families that we send care packages out to who live along the front lines, who have also been displaced from their homes. And so we have our what we call the anthill here. And then you mentioned our drivers on the road. They're out today as well.
Let's pick it up from there and talk about sort of what you do on a day-to-day basis, and talk a bit more about what the drivers are up to. You actually got another van. Maybe you've gotten more since then, but we'll continue the conversation with my friend Laurie Jackson, who's coming to us from Ukraine. We'll see you after this break. Welcome back to the Ricky Matthews Show. We're having a special show today that is focused on Ukraine and the friendship that I have developed with Laurie Jackson, who is an independent missionary working in Ukraine. And again, how I got to know her was my cousin's daughter actually adopted two sons from Ukraine. And one actually, you're talking about the war that started in 2014. I mean, that had been going on for a very long time. So you guys have lived in this situation where there's been a lot of families impacted. And then, of course, we know the full-scale war took it to a whole nother level, but you had been living in a very sort of uncertain situation for quite a while, haven't you?
Yeah, absolutely. Before I moved to what we call the anthill, the shelter for internally displaced people, I was living in an apartment with 7 internally displaced people in Kyiv for 7 years, I guess, before the full-scale invasion.
So let's get back to the anthill effort and obviously think about anthill. What happens when you kick an anthill? But say it in your words.
So that's kind of how Ants got started, is that we just saw this incredible movement of people wanting to help each other. And it just reminded us of how when an anthill gets kicked, the ants immediately begin rebuilding. They immediately begin working together and coming together to rebuild their home. And that's what happened. Russia came in and kicked our home. And so even as we fight this war, we continue to rebuild our anthill.
So the war as it was being fought before the full-scale invasion that started around 2014, it wasn't what we're seeing today, where Russia would go in and do complete annihilation of towns. Was it? I mean, it was. Explain sort of the difference.
Not to the scale that it is now. Russia was destroying homes. It was destroying families. It was taking over apartments and places that people had lived. But not to the scale, the degree that it is now. Now when they come in, they take over an area and completely destroy it. If you've seen pictures of Mariupol, if you haven't, look it up. It was a thriving city, and now it's been razed to the ground. And not only destroying houses and homes, destroying, like you said, families, and complete just no care for the civilians in the area that they're taking over as well. They've kidnapped children, raped and beaten people. I have friends who have been beaten by Russian soldiers. I have a friend who was in Azovstal who is still being held captive. And so, yeah, it's awful.
I know that it's been reported, but this whole notion of hundreds of children being taken into Russia. There's nothing you can do about that, is? I mean, do you ever hear ongoing conversations to say how can we get these kids back? I mean, what is the latest? Because I haven't heard any or read anything about it in quite a while.
Actually, praise the Lord for an organization called Save Ukraine. It's a friend of a friend who had started a different organization working with street children when I first moved to Ukraine, and then was in charge of children and family services in Kyiv and actually helped me when I ended up in Kyiv with a kid who was underage, whose mom's rights were removed, and we needed to figure out how to keep him okay. But so he started this organization, Save Ukraine, and they go in and help families get their children back who have been taken into Russia. But it's much harder when we're talking about orphans because there isn't family to be looking for them. And so, yeah, it's horrible. It's scary.
Is Russia obviously must be open to those conversations? But there was at least some conventional wisdom out there that they wanted to keep the kids. So,
absolutely. They use it as propaganda and say that the kids are in a safer place, that it's better for them to be in Russia, and use that as their excuse for keeping other people's children. I don't know.
Amazing. So what's interesting is that you had a wave of fighters that sort of this initial wave of fighters, that there's and maybe I'm oversimplifying that, but these are men and maybe some women who wanted to go fight, who wanted to go defend the country. And then as time sort of waned, you then had some that are the younger men and others that were beginning to get drafted. So how families view this, initially there was sort of this, we're all together as a country and we're going to go fight this war. But now, and we've seen too many of those men killed, and now you have more being drafted now. That's incredibly unsettling. And too many people who have been killed, and you see too many families that have been destroyed. Talk about what that's like, Laurie.
It's hard. It's hard to know what and how and to keep going. And I have friends, like you said, who have been killed. I have friends who have gone to fight because they want to be there. I have friends who have been drafted and now are glad that they are there and are glad to help. And I have friends who have been drafted against their will, but are doing what they're doing because they want to help their country. But the question of how long is always there, and how much more do people have to suffer, and why does Russia let this keep going is always in the back of everyone's mind. Yeah, and
there is no current description of what a win looks like.
We haven't lost so much. So much has been taken from us.
Right.
And Andre was on your show back in the beginning. He was drafted. And the one thing he says all the time, every time we talk, pray that my family can be together again. And he's fighting and he will fight. And he's even glad to be there to be able to help in the way that he's helping, but his family isn't together.
Yeah, so difficult. And he was an entrepreneur, right? I mean, he
yeah,
like so many, we were talking about software engineers and writers and entrepreneurs and small business owners and consultants and graphic artists. I mean, all these people that you've introduced me to over time, I remember each and every one of them. And, they had a normal life in Kyiv and other cities. And even with the fighting that was going on to the east, you guys had, since 2014, you found your new normal within the guise of that. You hated the situation, but people had lives. And then when the full-scale invasion happened, just like after a hurricane, everything sort of goes to heck in a handbasket, and you got to figure out, what does our new normal look like? And in the case of Andres and people like him, it was, I'm going to go fight. And gosh, I mean, you got so many of these men have come through the UAN effort and now are on the front line. I don't know how you deal with that. I don't know how you go to bed at night. The worry that you and your counterparts must have prevailing 24 hours a day has to be torturous.
Yeah, all the time. The what if question doesn't leave. And at the same time, we hold on to the hope that we have in Christ, and we truly believe that that Ukraine is in the right in this war. And I don't want to get into politics. I don't really care about politics. I'm a missionary, but at the same time, I don't know. We have to believe that God is here and He is with us.
I think it's important to note that Laurie is she's given her life to helping people in Ukraine. I mean, she went over there as a missionary and then fell in love with Ukraine. And again, in all the conversations I've had, they remind me of Mississippians. They love their communities. They love their neighbors. They are Christian in most cases. And, they want nothing more than to have their life back. It's just an incredible situation. But I know that because of where you are in the situation, Laurie's going to be very careful about what she's going to say, especially when it gets to the political side of things. She wants to say a lot, but she's not going to say anything. Let's put it that way. But it's hard. I mean, it's hard not to feel for their unsettling position. That is for sure. So, Laurie, I'm hearing you talk, and I'm just touched. I saw the post that you did today about International Volunteerism Day, and life goes on in your effort. I mean, you guys have a long to-do list. You have so many people that you're trying to serve, that you are serving. And when we get back on the other side, we'll talk about what International Volunteerism Day means to you guys and what's going on today. We'll see you after this break with my friend Laurie Jackson from Ukraine. Welcome back to the Ricky Matthews Show from the Citizens Bank studio. As I hear the music coming back into this segment, that guitar riff, it makes me think of Robert Johnson and the unbelievable impact he had on blues music and really music in general. People like Eric Clapton and the Beatles and the Rolling Stones, all touched by Robert Johnson long after he died. But here I am in the Mississippi Delta at my place up here, and can't help but think about the blues impact and the impact that it's had on so many people. I have my friend Laurie Jackson with us today. She's coming to us from Ukraine, and I enjoy touching base with her because I think one of the most important messages you can get from the conversation that Laurie and I are having is that they're not unlike us. They want their normal back. They want their land back. They want their homes back. And they want to be able to live a life that's not full of worry. And they want their families to be together again. These are all the issues that they face on a daily basis. And in these conversations that we're having together, I hope that you get that out of what we're talking about. Hey, Laurie, just a quick side note. One of the interesting things about the fact that you and I are coming together, I'm in the Mississippi Delta. Where I am. It's an area. It's called Delta Island. And it's literally surrounded by water. It's approximately 5,000 square foot farm. And up to this point, I would not have been able to do the show from here, incidentally, because broadband access and laying fiber optic cable has been something that Mississippi has really focused on. They really focused on getting broadband into communities, especially poor communities of the Mississippi Delta and rural communities. 51% of Mississippians live in rural areas. So they've really focused on that, and they've laid hundreds of millions of dollars worth of fiber optic cable. And here I am on a farm. It's a collection of homes that are sort of the family farm here, and I'm able to have fiber optic, really high-speed internet access that enables me to do this show. So it's a real success story in Mississippi that we've been working to do that, and we're doing it through the electric co-ops. The electric co-ops have been empowered to go into this business, and if they'll invest, the Mississippi will match that investment. And as a result, over $1 billion worth of investments have happened in rural communities like this community that I'm sitting in now. What's interesting about Ukraine, so I'm having this conversation, in spite of the war, I'm having this conversation with you. And the interesting point is that when I'm in Biloxi, or maybe even if I'm in the Mississippi Delta, I've got a better connection with you in Ukraine than I do when I talk to people in the state capitol. I hate to hear it, but I hate to say that, but it's true. But but Ukraine has made a significant investment in infrastructure as well,
Mhm.
hasn't
Oh, absolutely. Technology is incredible. My mom and I talk all the time about how my internet here is better than her internet there. And honestly, like there are so many things. In the beginning, we were worried about losing connection and not being able to be in touch. Before the full scale invasion, a friend of mine had said, okay, if we lose connection, like this is where we meet 2 hours after we lose connection. And praise the Lord, we never did. And we had some issues last winter with power outages, but the cell phone companies here have banded together. I can change the provider that I'm using if one of them goes down for no extra charge, all because of what's happening so that people can continue to stay in touch.
Yeah, it's amazing. And also, if you think back at the people the entrepreneurs and others that you have introduced me to, many of them have been very significant entrepreneurs in the tech sector.
Mm-hmm.
So, you think of Ukraine as this sort of ultra modern country that really understands the role that tech plays, and they've worked really hard to incubate, so to speak, tech entrepreneurs so they can be successful. And it's a great story of what was happening before the full scale invasion.
Mm-hmm.
Unfortunately, all that kind of puts on hold. But we think about the infrastructure that's been put in place. When Hurricane Katrina hit coastal Mississippi, the cell towers and the cell capabilities were not prepared for, the worst natural disaster in American history. But since then, they've built all this infrastructure that should enable us to be able to operate afterwards. The infrastructure resiliency, even during a war like you're dealing with, it's amazing to me that they're able to keep that going. The other interesting story is I remember extraordinarily well, and you can comment about this, that during the winter last year, what we saw is that Russia was bombing a lot of the power stations and substations, and they were really attacking the infrastructure to try to create as bad a morale and as tough a living situation in as much of Ukraine as they possibly could. What was amazing about what Ukraine did, though, and for people who don't know this story, is they would bomb a power plant or a substation or whatever they were bombing, and almost immediately, they're talking about ants. They converged around wherever that was and immediately started to fix it, and they would have power back up in really a significant short period of time. It reminds me of Mississippi Power Company and what they're able to do after a hurricane. It's just incredible how these ants, again, all these power employees from multiple states come together to converge on where they're having the issue, and they fix it. They just or they bypass it or do whatever they got to do that. But boy, Ukraine has been very resilient when it comes to the threats to your infrastructure, haven't they?
Mm-hmm. Oh, absolutely. Ukraine also, I mentioned the sharing of cell phone services, but power plants were able to share energy last winter as well. And so we would have scheduled power outages so that our energy could be sent to other places in Ukraine that needed it, which is incredible. And at the anthill, I don't know if we've ever actually talked about, we have what we call a power ant. It's a small power station, kind of like a Echo Flow, if you know what that is in the States, that before the power outages started, a friend of mine had started building, and we started giving to our defenders, but we were able to use them here at the hotel and send them to other families and things that needed larger power, I don't know, power chargers to use.
Yeah. So is this because I had the opportunity early in my career to be the operation director at the Sun Herald. So we had an uninterrupted power source, which was a bank of batteries that would kind of keep us running, the technology running. Then we also had generators, so we could really handle anything. So what would happen is the power would go off, but the emergency power supply that fed most of the technology in the company would continue to keep that going. And then we didn't have, at the time, we didn't have automatic switching, but later got automatic switching. What that means essentially is that when the power went down, we'd have to go through a very orderly flow of procedures to bring the generated power source up. Then when the power came back on, we would have to go through that same process in a reverse fashion
Mm-hmm.
to get off the generator and get back on power. Eventually, obviously, automatic switching came to bear. So it knew when, if it was a temporary thing, it would use the temporary emergency power sources. That was the bank of batteries. That would be enough to kind of keep things going. And then if the power came back on again, the generator power wasn't necessary. But essentially, that's what you guys have put in place, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. We're using old Tesla batteries.
Yeah, in that sense, that's interesting. Again,
Mm-hmm.
you got some really talented technology people around you. So you're using old Tesla battery. Isn't that interesting?
Mm-hmm.
What a great story that is. Has anyone done a story about that?
I don't think so.
You know what you need to get? Because I came from journalism, obviously. I was a publisher of newspapers and digital media companies that were focused on news. But you need to get a journalist in your midst. You need to get a writer in your midst, so you can just constantly turn out stories about the efforts that are taking place there.
For sure. It's incredible. Like, we talk all the time about how we need cameras and we need, like you said, like somebody to just be documenting because it really is incredible, the things that.
Laurie, after Hurricane Katrina, I worked with Governor Haley Barbour to form what is called the Governor's Commission on Recovery, Rebuilding, and Renewal. And so we had an executive committee. I was on the executive committee, and I was the vice chair of what is called the tourism effort. So, gaming and all this was a big part of coastal Mississippi. So we needed to quickly put something in place that helped us understand, where is tourism going to be in the recovery effort? What kind of law changes do we need to make that will enable casinos to reinvest hundreds of millions of dollars to rebuild? Well, anyway, we went through that process, and along the way, we realized that one of the things we needed to do was plant journalists in each of the committees and let them write, not after the effort was over, but let them write as the effort was ongoing. And so when we got done, we literally published a book of the recovery effort. Okay, so then what happened is I go to Alabama, and in my new role in Alabama, and then the Governor Riley, the governor of Alabama, approaches me about leading the oil recovery efforts after the Deepwater Horizon oil spill. And so what we did is we took the template that we did so well in Mississippi, and we applied that template in Alabama, and then we hired journalists to work on each of the committees from day one. And so when the effort was over, the writers were done, and the book was published within a very short period of time. It was an amazing effort. You should do that. You should be capturing that in the very same way.
It's incredible.
Hey, when we come back, we'll continue our conversation with Laurie Jackson, who's coming to us from Ukraine. Welcome back to the Ricky Matthews Show from the Citizens Bank studio, coming to you from the Mississippi Delta today. And I have my friend Laurie Jackson, who's become a really good friend over the past couple of years, from Ukraine. In fact, we were talking during the break. I told Laurie I would love to visit her. And she told me probably the quickest way to get there is go through Budapest and then catch a 6-hour train. And I wish that were possible. It's just under the circumstances with this show, I'd have to try to figure out a way to do the show from travel. And that would, I think, be next to impossible. But anyway, the sentiment is there. Laurie, before we get to the International Volunteerism Day, I just wanted to mention to you that my wife, Ann, and I are Catholic, and our family is Catholic. And we committed after our son, Justin, who works in New York City, really urged us, because he had done it last year, to read the Bible in a year. And there's the Bible in the Year effort by a guy by the name of Father Mike. And it's terrifically done. It really is. And the lesson you get from that is that the Lord never said there wasn't going to be suffering. He never did say that. And if you're really true to the Bible and read it carefully and understand it, especially like we have, every day getting some new lesson and reading multiple books in a day. And what you get is that throughout the history of the Bible, there was always a lot of pain and misery and difficulty. But at the end of the day, what you learn is that if you have a faith in God, that it gives you a way to sort of bridge the gap in the difficulties. And what you've seen in your efforts there is that, here, I'll say it this way: if so many of the people you dealt with did not have faith, it would be so much harder, wouldn't it?
Oh, absolutely. A lot of the residents who are here, our team is believers for the most part, and but our residents weren't in the beginning. And as they've come to know the Lord, just even the encouragement we get from them and from being together and each other, we couldn't do it without it. And the one thing I know is God's faithfulness.
Yeah. Does the faith gives people hope. Faith gives the people who are going through very difficult times something to lean on. And this is not a religious show, obviously, but I'm a faithful Catholic, and I know that my faith helps me in my life, and it's been quite amazing watching your team and what you have done, and how strong your faith is, even during these incredibly difficult times. It's to draw people closer to God as opposed to take them further away from God, which has been kind of the wonderful lesson that you've taught me through your efforts. So today's International Volunteerism Day. I noticed in the post you've got your drivers out doing what they're doing. And what does a day in the life of the UA ANT effort look like? Like today, I mean, your to-do list is long.
So it depends on the day. Obviously, every day is different. But yeah, you saw our drivers on the road. They're headed to take a vehicle to our defenders, and hopefully some hope. One of the most encouraging things about my team is that the most important thing to them is relationships. Yeah. And so our drivers travel to the front to make deliveries, even when we could send it via a really great postal service. But because they want that contact, that personal, like you said, wanting to come visit me, we have the same feelings. We want to be together. We want to see each other. And so this week we've had one of the moms, we have retreats that we host for families of our fallen heroes. And a mom and her little boy were in the area for his birthday. And we got to spend the day with her little boy on his birthday. And it was a really hard day, but it was also a really good day. Just remembering the important things are that we have each other. And so today we're receiving and packing Christmas packages and getting ready to send out Christmas packages. We send out care packages to about 100 families that have been displaced. We have about 100 families a month that come to us who are internally displaced in our area, and they come here. We have our kids here at the Anthill who we will provide Christmas presents for. And so a lot of that this week. We also we cook for everybody, and so we're always have somebody in the kitchen cooking, cleaning. Yeah, I don't know. That's kind of what a typical day looks like.
So if a family is displaced and they come to your hotel in really short order, they find it to be sort of a safe place to be. And what I notice about your pictures is that there are a lot of smiles, and there's a sense of trying to make the holidays as real as possible. I know behind the smiles is a lot of pain, but imagine what it would be like if you didn't have your effort. I know you think about that all the time.
Oh, absolutely. We are so thankful to be able to be together. It's as important for us as it is for our residents to have people who are with you, who understand your situation, who want to walk with you through the difficult times. And that's where the joy comes from.
Well, Laurie, thank you so much for joining us today. Hope the listeners, got a look inside Ukraine in a way maybe they haven't thought about before, and they can see what's in your heart, and they can hear you talk and think, gosh, she's not unlike me. She's someone I can really relate to. And that's the story of the Ukrainians. So God bless you, my friend, and have a Merry Christmas. And we'll talk to you after the first of the year.
Thank you.
God bless you. Have a great day, and we will see you tomorrow.